All right, Bradley, let's talk about Arc 24 now.
Crushed,
Crushed.
named after the soda,
Yes.
Orange Crush.
We're going to have to talk about these Arc names pretty soon.
Yeah, I guess we will, won't we?
So, Crushed is a bulk of the Behemoth fight. I think I want to open up with a little rant I have about Behemoth. But
I'll
this
put this man on blast.
he would put me on blast if I was anywhere close to him, which is part of the rant. Um, I've always had a thing, and this extends beyond Worm, where there's I don't know why, but in my mind, if there's a character that's just ungodly powerful, and there's no feasible way that people can take it out unless there's some bullshit or some very Deus Ex Machina or luck, I'm put off from the get go, and I feel like maybe it's because I'm like, man, this is just so unfair, and like it just reminds me of the unfairness of life or something. But it just puts me off to begin with. An example would be a certain character in the Chimera Ant arc from Hunter x Hunter. I got that vibe from characters like that, or like say a Dragon Ball villain where he's introduced and he's just like, "Oh, Jiren is so strong, Goku's gonna have to do some bullshit to beat him," etc. It just always rubs me off. And that being said, it can still salvage itself with how it's utilized,
Yeah,
which is really important. Which is important to say because, like, when Leviathan showed up, I was like, "Oh man, these Endbringers are giving me that weird vibe I get inside of me. That's a very personal thing, right?" Thankfully, I think the way Leviathan and the Simurgh are used really counter that. I feel like there's a lot of parts of them that are balanced and maybe like a storytelling point where Leviathan is really strong, but you can see his movements, you can see his attacks, and there's a good chance you'll survive. But he will fuck up your city.
oh yeah.
That's his big thing.
Don't get me wrong.
The Simurgh is easy to fight off, but she can do very complex plans to make sure certain people die. You can argue back and forth with like how dangerous that is in comparison to the other three. But I feel like I picture her as the assassin, where it's like I need to kill the king of this country. The Simurgh could set in motion the events that would where that would happen the most likely, or something like that, you know. Behemoth, I just feel is like objectively like the most broken of the three, and just this idea that at any point you're fighting him, right, you can be struck by lightning, which is fast and you can't dodge it, and if he gets close to you, you just die. You just get obliterated from his aura, and he can make earthquakes and fires, and it's just like they call Leviathan kind of like the in between where he can be smart and like a tactician, but also strong and hard hitting. And then Simurgh is the big brains where she can set in motion these big plans. Behemoth is way too smart and deadly, where it's like Leviathan is such a small problem in comparison, and the Simurgh's effectiveness is so debatable, like with just how complex her powers are, at least from where I am. Where it's just like,
Yeah,
my god, Behemoth is a absolute lad.
I'll say the Simurgh has always probably been my favorite out of the three. Um, what I think like what I like about this arc isn't necessarily Behemoth. I think it's like all the stuff that's going on in the setting around the fight because like whenever I look back on it, I feel like half the arc they're not even fighting Behemoth. They're like walking around underground or talking to people, or learning things. So
Yeah,
it's really interesting. And at least when they are fighting Behemoth, I kind of like the maneuvers they do where
to
they
keep
make
him at bay.
the
Yeah,
giant V sign, which
yeah.
I'm remembering is funny because they explicitly did it because I think Cuff didn't want to make a rude gesture like flipping off, so
Hmm.
she chose V for victory. But that's actually like an equivalent of flipping someone off over there. So
Yeah, that was a good touch. I think that's revealed later, but
I like the kind of power synergies they do.
yeah. But that's basically my Behemoth rant. There's a second part to it, I guess, is that I feel like there should have been more despair here. And don't get me wrong, the situation gets super dire, especially when Behemoth is cornering in on the Undersiders and some of the other groups. That shit was super tense, right? And I really love that. What I mean is, like, when you're fighting Behemoth, at any point you can get struck down by a lightning bolt. But a lot of the characters are just kind of, like, acting the same way they would in any kind of high-stakes fight. They're like... If you're fighting Jack, I feel like a lot of the characters would be acting the same. And Jack is, like, not nearly as deadly. There was one character that kind of did freak out and I really liked, and I think it was Cuff. I wanted to see more of, like, I'm in a war zone right now where a mortar shell can land on me at any point, and I'm just freaking the fuck out, and I'm kind of losing it.
Yeah, I can actually see that because, like you said, as opposed to, like, when you're fighting a more traditional enemy, I feel like here the entire time the like hairs on the back of my neck would be standing up because I'm like, actually any second I could die.
Yeah, and like you can't dodge like certain lightning bolt. Like if he's anywhere near you, you're super liable to die. And don't get me started on like the dread that would be. Oh God, he's just running at us. Like what do you do? And a lot of these people are inexperienced, so it's like, it's when you're fighting Leviathan, you can see what he's doing, and you can kind of start at least reacting, because he has to make motions to make his big water attacks, which I think is a good balancing act for him. And he can be tricky with his water clone and stuff, you know, but like, it's not a one-shot kill lightning bolt. So yeah, it's just a little thing where like, it would have been cool to see more pandemonium, because if I was there, I would be on the verge of throwing up every single second, you know. No jokes would be getting cracked. I'd be freaking out.
Yeah.
On to the content here. In the first chapter, an Alexandria shows up, and I was like, is this an Alexandria clone, or is she revived? And this made me worried a little bit. As it turns out, it's Pretender, right? That's his name?
Yeah, and it was funny because the first time I was reading this story, I saw Alexandria there, and for a few seconds I was like, oh, that's bullshit. But then I kind of realized what story I was reading, and I was like, there's no way it's that easy or that simple or whatever.
Yeah, I do like how it's not like she's just revived, but this feeds back into my problem with 22. We'll never escape 22. That's why it's called Cell.
Perfect Cell.
Was that one Cell? I think that was Cell.
Yeah, it was Cell.
Okay, perfect. Good analogy, Willer.
Perfect.
My problem with it is when Taylor kills Alexandria, a big part of why I was like disgusted with it is that like Alexandria is a triumvirate. No matter what she does, the world needs her to be alive for the next 2 years, man. It is super vital that they have the full fighting force, especially when things like Behemoth exist and you're really seeing him in motion, right? This took away that horrible thing that she did by removing one of the 3 big pieces of the fighting Endbringer puzzle, and it just kind of fixed it. So again, Taylor's punishment was such a slap on the wrist, where even the worst thing she did for humanity, which was killing Alexandria, got reverted in a way. So it's like, oh, Alexandria can still be here. There's no problems with fighting the Endbringers now. You still have all 3 triumvirates, or there's still problems, right? But it's not as severe of a hit.
I think that's actually, I hadn't ever actually really thought about that, but I think that's actually really valid. I said actually like 5 times that sentence.
You actually did.
I actually did. Yeah. But yeah, I actually had not thought of that. I think it's a good point. I want to see what other people think about this.
Yeah, leave comments below.
Leave comments or email us at roundaboutcast@neopets.org.
Is that... Can you have Neopet emails?
I don't know. Can you?
No. Okay, you made that up. You had me for a second.
John F. Neopet probably has a Neopet email.
Yeah, well. But yeah, that's basically my thing. I might have ranted a slightly bit too much longer than I wanted to, but it rubs me off the wrong way and kind of doubled down my problems with 22, where like at this point they're not fixable and I'm just gonna have to move on. So we get to see what Contessa does shortly after that, which is a sight to behold. What do you do? I win. Uh, good
Yeah,
line.
I told Willer that like if it was up to me, that's where I would have split the chapter. Even though it probably would have made the chapter very short, I just think ending it there is just like such a bomb drop
Yeah,
because we've had peaks of Contessa just like
wrecking
totally
shop.
soloing teams of people up to this point, seemingly like really easily. So, and this was even a bigger deal for me because like the friend who originally recommended me Worm, he was always just like, "Oh, Contessa's the coolest. She's so cool. Like you're gonna love it." And then I finally got here, and it's like Taylor's like, "We're obviously not gonna win," and she's like, "What do you do?" She's like, "What's your power?" And Contessa's like, "I win." And even though there's no chapter break there, I I braked there because I was like, "Holy shit!"
Put the iPad down. Um, so a really cool thing about Contessa is that she explained how she wins, and then Taylor's like, "Well, just go beat the Behemoth then." And the idea that she can't, and the realization where it's like, oh, Contessa might not even see a path of victory when it comes to fighting the Endbringers, was a very sobering thought.
Yeah, and
Also, it got me in the mindset where it's like, this arc is called Crush. They're super gonna lose.
I really love how like I think Contessa's ability is really cool in combat, but I also love outside of that how it can kind of be used as a story device based on whether she can or can't see a path to victory, and
Hmm.
also if there is a path to victory, what it is. Because like the implication that maybe she can't see a path because there is none, it's really grim, but I thought it was interesting. The other thing I find interesting is Contessa basically reveals her ability to Taylor. She says, I can see the paths to victory and execute them perfectly. And Taylor says, this is such a big secret. Why are you telling me this? And Contessa says, I think that should be obvious. And Taylor
Mm.
says, I don't think it is that obvious, but what I kind of get out of this is a few things that she basically said, I think it's obvious immediately after telling Taylor her ability. So either revealing her ability to Taylor is part of a path to victory, like it's part of something she's trying to accomplish,
Hmm.
or maybe like if she didn't tell Taylor her ability, they would have resumed fighting at some point, but
Mm.
if she reveals that this is her ability, Taylor's like, obviously I'm not going to fight you because if Contessa's fighting you in the first place, it's because there's no chance she's going to lose. She's following a path to victory.
I had no read on this before. I just kind of let this one slide. As you were explaining it, I kind of thought it was the first one.
Yeah.
Where it's the Doctor Strange thing. It's put this is our one chance, and part
Yeah,
of it is
just
me telling
the
you.
1 in 14
Yeah.
quadrillion.
Um, I will use this Contessa fight as an example of the problem that I echo a lot with Worm action. Is that it can be a little too long. I mean, I guess that's the one main weakness of Worm in general is that it's a little bit too long on the
Is a
like.
beefy boy.
It's a beefy boy. It could stand to do some ring fit adventure. Um, and I picked this point out just because I thought like it just popped into my mind. It's like that's exactly what I'm talking about. So Contessa beats the group, the Chicago Ward, I believe. That's like she was fighting that whole group. She beats them once. She beats them once. She doesn't explain the power yet, but after she like pins Taylor down, Taylor manages to escape, and they go a second round. I don't think that second round was needed. I thought the first round was super cool, and it left enough like intrigue on just how much she can dodge stuff. So it's just like that's just one of those examples where it's like you could cut this fight in half, get the same point across, and shorten a little bit of the overall length of the story. And I guess I think about this a lot because in my mind I'm constantly thinking of how Worm could fit into a Netflix series, which we could talk about later.
Boy,
Uh,
get ready for the script drop.
oh yeah, but it's just one of those things where it's like if I was to direct this fight, I feel like this might be a chance to like cut a little bit off because realistically, you cannot adapt all of Worm to a TV series. It's just way too massive, and it's part of the adaptation process. You know,
Yeah,
like
and
you
it's
gotta.
something I think about too, because like as long as it is, like I'm still one of the super fans who like enjoys pretty much the whole thing. But I think pretty much anyone could agree that there are places where the story could be trimmed down.
Hmm.
So maybe when we finally get the final edited version of the story, wink, nudge, nudge, wink, wink at Wildbow, who's not sitting next to me.
Or
Uh,
listening to us at all.
I don't know. I think he's, from what I hear, he's streamlining the story, and I'll be
That'd be
really interested to
fantastic.
see how things like that turn out.
I was also thinking, like, just as a side note, kind of putting a target on my back. Battery and assault can completely cut out that storyline. Maybe that's harsh to say, but that really didn't go anywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, who knows?
I
I
think the main thing we got out of like the battery interlude was the idea that Cauldron like is assisting certain members of the Slaughterhouse Nine.
yeah,
And then outside of that, it's just kind of like the rom-commy thing
yeah,
between battery and assault. So
yeah, but in a 30 arc long story, you know.
yeah,
But regardless, yeah, that was just a little side note there. Um, so we start talking about Endbringers and their goals and how each time they attack, they have a goal and how they explicitly hold back. So this is Behemoth holding back, by the way, and Leviathan destroying that city was holding back,
yeah,
and
they are jobbing, they are jabronis.
the Simmer ruining the life of these teenagers was super holding back. So it's like, Jesus Christ, how doomed is humanity? You know, like, and there's three of these fuckers, and they attack on a regular interval. It couldn't get worse. Um, we meet Fursay, who you say is one of your favorite characters.
Oh my god, I fucking love this guy.
Tell me
Uh,
why you love this guy, because for me, he kind of came and went. You know, I totally get that he's a dark mirror of Taylor, but I wanna hear what you got to say.
yeah, I've always loved him because like right off the bat, I just kind of love his presence that he's introduced with.
Mm,
Um,
definitely.
because I think the way they like Taylor's walking with a companion, and whenever they walk up on Fierce, she doesn't know who he is, and this guy is like, whenever there's like controversy and talk goes around of disbanding organizations like the Protectorate, it's guys like him that we bring up to make them change their mind.
That's so
Uh,
good.
and like basically, I think the way they describe it is in India, there's kind of like the more flashy capes that are more analogous to what goes on in America. And then there's guys like him that kind of operate out of sight of the outside world.
The Cold Capes.
Yeah, and I think he even brings up the idea of like S-class threats that the majority of the world isn't even aware exist, that
Jesus.
they're in charge of fighting. Um, so I just like the way he's introduced, but I love his conversations with Taylor because I really think he's a glimpse into what she could become someday.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things that she has done that he says he admires, that she takes these hard choices. She'll take the tough road if she thinks it's for the best, because that's the thing that he will do, and that's the thing that he's done. Um, he explicitly he references a time where there was an extremely just powerful, monstrous, evil villain, and he was able to take them out, but his family had died in the process. And through his power, he could have conceivably gone back and saved his family, but he didn't because he knew there was a chance this villain could come back. Um, and I think that's I don't know if Taylor is at that point where she would sacrifice her father to take out a villain, but if she keeps building upon the philosophy that she's built up over the course of this book, I could see her becoming someone like Fierce.
Yeah.
And he's been doing this for 10 years, like way longer than Taylor has. And we see where that takes him. We kind of see like the extreme side of this philosophy where he will risk completely destroying like one of the most populous cities in the world and maybe this subcontinent for a chance at taking out an Endbringer.
Yeah.
And
Dude's wild.
and he views himself perfectly justified in it. It's I almost utilitarian.
Yeah.
You know, these however many hundreds of thousands or maybe probably more like millions or tens of millions, however many people are here, you know, they die, but the billions of the rest of humanity, they're fine, so that's okay. Um, I
Quite
don't
the
know.
philosophy, you know.
I really like their conversations.
They got good chemistry.
Yeah.
But well said, Bradley. That's why we pay you the big bucks.
The big bucks. Donate to my Patreon that doesn't exist.
Um, from then on, we get this 15-minute time limit. I kind of missed what First Ace power even was. Could you re-explain it to me? I just know he had that big device bomb. What was his power necessarily?
So he has two portals, and basically an object can go in one portal and come out of the other one a few minutes in the past or future.
Mm-hmm.
And he has kind of set up some. He set up some way of using these portals to like loop light back on itself and duplicate it.
Jesus.
And so he's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna make a huge energy bomb," which Taylor's like, "That's a really bad idea because this particular Endbringer manipulates energy."
Yeah, and it was part the whole goal, right, was that it wanted to absorb this attack and then just dish it back out into huge explosions. So,
yeah, we know, at this point, I think we know the Endbringers have objectives, and
yeah.
so Fierce knew that like they were roughly on schedule for a new Endbringer attack to happen. So a few days ago, he had started charging up one of these attacks, and he just couldn't go on anymore. He started too early, so he started up another one, and Behemoth is like, "Oh, well, this guy keeps charging up energy because he wants to hit me with it. I guess I'll go let him."
Do it. So this chapter ends with the Endbringers pinned down by Behemoth, and this is like some of the most tense Worm has ever been because he's so close to them, and that bullshit overpowered aura is just going to melt them. Ooh. And Golem in particular and Tecton are doing so much to hold them back, and it just makes you very uneasy. And
yeah. And speaking of, before we get into the kicker.
Oh, right, Golem.
Yeah, he's cool.
He's Theo. Who he is. Oh, is that... I can say that... I'm going to say that that's not a spoiler because, as you pointed out to me, it's in the bottom of the chapters that Theo is there, and it's pretty clear with the context clues that he is Golem, so yeah. I think we're good.
And one thing I think that's cool about the current team he's on, and Taylor points this out, where, like you mentioned that Golem and Tecton are doing a lot to kind of keep Behemoth at bay.
And the whole team is built on synergy, right?
Yeah, she's like, wow, your team has a ton of battlefield control. And I think Tecton was like, yeah, we actually aimed for that when building our team. And it's like, oh yeah, heroes can build teams, because villains usually don't end up with each other by choice. They usually just kind of end up together. So yeah, heroes can be like, oh, if you were to go be a hero in, I don't know, Boston, you could synergize with this person, and it's like, oh, sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's a really cool concept. Exclusive to the hero. Maybe this hero thing isn't so bad, huh?
Maybe hero not so bad.
You know what is bad?
Ooh.
Regent.
He gone.
Don't say it like that.
No, pour one out for our boy. Some
Fuck,
Crown
man. You know
Royal.
what's the worst part about his death? It almost feels like he didn't do anything. Because, like, so as I understood it, Behemoth was super close. Regent steps out for like a second to just get him to look over. Behemoth looks over, roasts him, and in that second, they're able to drive him off more. But like that could have gone so wrong, and it was just like a second distraction. It's hard to say if like they even needed that distraction to really pull it off because like the timing felt so close. It felt
Yeah.
like Regent got roasted immediately, and Behemoth was back at it.
Yeah. I think in
Oh,
particular he was like trying to kite Behemoth away from Imp,
Imp,
who was
yeah,
far away.
who he
And
loves
I'm
more or
actually going to
less.
talk a lot more about Regent's death in the next arc,
Okay,
where Taylor is able to reflect on it.
yeah,
Um, at least here, for the short part of it, I did like that we kind of Regent is someone who was very like emotionally distant at the beginning of the story, and for a
hmm
lot of it, he's a sociopath, and
it's
he doesn't really care about anything the way the others do.
it's tough to say that he's a sociopath at the same time because I keep thinking back of when he helped Taylor out without her even knowing.
Yeah, you know what?
And it's like he has emotions, but they're so crisscrossed and fucked up, and he just can't process them. And it's really complex and interesting.
Yeah,
So
I just like that.
I
He
think he
finally
did care.
he finally met someone that was kind of able to give him what he had lost from living with his father, probably.
It's such a bummer, and it's like Regent, it'd be so hard for him to make up for the horrible things he's done, but like maybe he could have become something better.
Yeah,
And he was on his way, kind of. It's hard to say. He was still a villain, and he still had so much to go, but he's already made so much
yeah.
progress, and
I
I
uh,
genuinely think he cared about the Undersiders.
I think Regent is an awesome character, and I get that this is like a very hectic battle, but I would have appreciated more like more text talking about this, probably.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say that. Well, I'm gonna say two things. One, I'm gonna say Wildbow is a fucking coward when it comes to character deaths, and here's why. Um, People say, and I've heard this sentiment before, that Worm is such a cool series because anyone can die at any point. I'm gonna say that people in Worm die as average as other series.
Especially with like especially compared to like most of the media that's out there now.
It's no
I,
Game of Thrones, you know, where like,
yeah,
and what I mean by this, like, people are clearly dying, but this is the first real character death on the protagonist side of the story. Um, like, what are some of the other major deaths so far? You know, we had Coil, maybe Mannequin, because he had a big impact on Taylor. Um, Maybe Bakuda and Tag in Alexandria. You know, Alexandria's back as their zombie self, so it's like that's the impact there is kind of even undone. So it's like this is the first serious character death. So I feel like that's pretty on par. Like I'm not disparaging this choice at all, but I also don't think it's super fair to say, "Well, Worm is this crazy story, man." And yeah, Wild Bill might be doing his dice rolls, but this is the first time I feel like where it's truly. Do you know if this was a dice roll, by the way, or was this intended?
I don't think it was,
Okay.
but
Um,
don't quote me on that.
it's not really like a serious complaint either way. It's just like um it's not what the internet led me to believe, but I've understood that since like Leviathan. Um Granted, things are getting pretty hectic where I am, but we'll see where that goes.
Whew.
I mean, at the end of the series is when people generally die, so that's not really that weird. Um but I will say it's a bummer though that when he did choose to do a character death, I think he did the character with the most potential. Like you said, there were so few lines spared relative to what could have been said about this death. and Regent was so interesting, and there was so much to explore with that character. I feel like I don't know, and it's also like the one that impacts Taylor maybe the least out of anyone that could have died. So it just ends up being like it's a really unfortunate choice that it
Yeah.
had to be Regent in my opinion because I
I think
really liked
the
him.
I think the time where his death really shines is later when she gets to visit his like monument or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Pour one out, man.
Woo.
What else do we got? There's a line here that I really think uh, highlights the just how hectic the situation is. Where like Taylor says, "Can we even coordinate with this many different languages?" And I think it speaks to how Endbringers have to bring people of all sorts of cultures and backgrounds together, and they have to somehow manage to fight these monsters that can very easily kill various capes with single attacks. Even the Simurg has attacks strong enough to like straight up kill capes,
Yeah,
right?
she
So
like
it's like
threw buildings.
yeah, so like none of them are there's gonna be deaths no matter what. Um, and yeah, I just thought that was an interesting point because teamwork is such a big point of Worm. I feel like all the battles are built around teamwork. Um, Finally, Cavalier interlude. Mouse Ear Girl is here. She's super funny and cute. And rest in peace, Mouse Ear Girl.
You hate to see it.
Though I guess I'm gonna be seeing a lot of her, huh,
Hey.
in the future with all these supposed clones coming back.
Chevalier's badass. I'm just throwing that out here.
God, man. I like how him and Miss Militia kind of like they dated for a little bit, and he has a crush on her. But you know they're both business oriented. So there's a thing where Cavalier can see people's trigger events? Question mark.
He
He,
like views these auras around people.
yeah, I don't think I got an explanation for that yet. Unless I did.
I think you can take it for what it says at this
Okay,
point.
yeah, that was my plan. There's only 50 heroes left at this point, dude. That's nuts.
And
Fuck Behemoth.
man, this my entire first read through of Worm. This can be like a very emotional, like it has a lot of emotional highs and lows.
Mm-hmm.
This was in my first read through the one chapter that actually made me cry,
Damn.
and my one cry, and as dark a story as Worm was actually a happy cry. When Behemoth died, I've talked about this before, but for some reason, like humanity's struggle against the Endbringers has always been just like a really like
Depressing story beat.
yeah, it's just something I've always really connected with and been fascinated with. And when Behemoth dies and everyone, hero and villain alike, is like hugging each other and laughing and crying, and Chevalier says he feels like he can feel the whole world cheering along with them. Like I'm
It's
getting goosebumps
beautiful.
just saying it.
It's beautiful, dude. It's fantastic.
I love it.
Also, like we got to talk about his part in it. He like deals such a critical blow to Behemoth after the first A bomb to keep him down, and he's in the death zone, and his armor is like surviving it, which is just what a fucking badass.
And he makes his cannon blade grow to like 20, 30 feet or something.
Wildbow fucking watches anime, man. I'm
That's
telling
some
you.
animation right there.
Um, and then Scion shows up and finishes him off, and it's such a feel good moment.
Yeah, and
And
even this like comes back to Kevin Norton's interlude,
yeah,
where it's like, if we didn't have that interlude, I'd be like, oh well, why did Scion finally do this now?
and there's
And if you
why.
think
Yeah,
back, like Kevin Norton's like, no, don't fight them, kill them. And then the next time there is one,
which
he's
is Kevin's fears were correct.
ooh, man.
The fears that maybe all these lives are just because I used the wrong words with the Golden Man. I wonder what happened to them all. I got nothing for the second interlude personally, so I'm good for arc 24.
Yeah, to me, Chevalier's interlude is like the real conclusion to this arc. After that, it's just kind of wrapping things up, putting characters where they need to be. I'm sure there are good moments in there, but we have more we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
So I think we